and welcome to the latest episode of the Scottish Running Podcast with myself, Sean Gaffney. And today we've got on a completely different type of guest. Usually we get runners on. This guest has a bit of a triathlon background. And before we go ahead, this episode that can be maybe a wee bit controversial, is talking about drugs in sport. Mark is an investigative journalist from the BBC. About 10 years ago, Mark did a documentary about drugs in sport, and he actually, as a guinea pig on himself, he injected himself over a period of time with EPO to see the effects. And also, we're not condoning the use of EPO in any way at all. But Mark's case is really, really interesting. His documentary is very, very interesting. And he's here to talk about his experience, what it was like on EPO for a certain amount of time. So, Mark, first of all, thank you for coming on. And how are you?
I'm good. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, like I said, so you use yourself as like a human guinea pig, as an EPO experiment to see what it was like. But before all that, so about your background. So you investigated journalists for the BBC, and you did compete in the triathlons.
Yep. I've done sport all my life. I was a competitive swimmer. And that's how that was my thing. I was a swimmer at uni. I was captain of the uni swimming team. And as I got a bit older, I just transitioned a bit into cycling, and then really it made sense to start doing triathlon. So yeah, I've done I don't know dozens of triathlons, a couple of Ironman
Wow.
races. I did Copenhagen, Barcelona. And yeah, I've always loved racing. I love getting a number on my back. So I've raced the bike, still do running races, and my last big triathlon was maybe 2020 or 2019, half Ironman. But I've been threatening to get back, and I think this could be the year. This could be the year when I go back to half Ironman. This is in Aberfeldy, end of August, hopefully.
Oh, nice. That's not that far away. That's just up
No,
the road.
no, 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 no. But I keep myself ticking over.
Nice. I mean, Ironman's that. I know a few people that did Ironman, and I'm just like, wow, I couldn't even imagine getting off that bike after 100 odd mile and having to do a marathon. I
It's
couldn't do it.
amazing that it's actually the two times I've done it. That was the thing I was really worried about. But it's such a relief to get off the bike. You actually feel with the first couple of miles like you're floating because you're so relieved. You're not sitting in that saddle for a moment longer. Yeah, I mean, I had a great experience in Barcelona on the swim and the bike, and the marathon. I just kind of fell apart a bit. That was 2010, I think, and I'd had a disappointing marathon. And then in Copenhagen, I'd really trained hard, and this was 2012 maybe. I really, my swim was brilliant. I came out of the water in 57, I think, and then there had been a thunderstorm the day before, and there was more rain in 24 hours than Copenhagen had seen in like 6 months, and the roads were just full of all this flint,
Mhm.
and everyone was warning about punctures. And as I was going through the bike, feeling so strong, your viewers will know what it's like in a race where just everything's going right. But I'm seeing all these people on the side of the road pumping up their tires, and there's punctures everywhere. I'm 60 miles in, and I think I've escaped it. I've broken the back of it. I'm looking at close to 10 hours, and then I get my first puncture. So I do it really quick. For another 5 miles, I get my second puncture, and then I get my third puncture. I've only got 3 kits, and I had made myself a jam sandwich, right, that I was saving for this. 112 miles is the bike section. I had a jam sandwich because you got to eat so much crap on the gels and all that, and I wanted some real food for the 100 mile mark. So I've only done 65 or 70. I've run out of all my kit. I'm sitting on the side of the road in tears, eating my eating my jam sandwich, and then a guy comes up in a van. He's like, "I'll come and help you. I'll take you to the next. I'll take you to the next service stage." But it was 5 miles down the road, and I thought, well, I can't do that. I can't go to the next service. That's me cheating.
Yeah.
I tell you what, where's the nearest one back the way? And it was about 5 or 6 miles back the way. So I got in the van and I went 5 miles back down the roads and got my puncture fixed and then carried on racing. So effectively I cheated by getting in the van, but I'd gone backwards. So I did an extra 5 or 6 miles. And then I got to the end of that and I was so far behind schedule. My wife was waiting for me. She's like, "What happened?" I was like, "Oh, it's a disaster," and the tears are streaming down my face. Anyway, I went out and did my best marathon ever after that, and I think I ran 3:40 at the end of an Ironman. Anyway, that was the last time I did an Ironman.
I mean, 340 is that. I mean, after all that, 340 is really good considering like the professionals are running like about 230 or so. 340. That's respectable at the end
Well,
of an
I'm
Ironman.
not sure I could do it now. At the end of anything, never mind the end of an Ironman. But yeah, so I've always loved to race, but these days, family work, just getting the time. It's not getting the time to do the training.
Yeah, yeah, and it's looking at quite a lot of amateur athletes. It's pretty much full time work, full time training. They're up in the
Mm.
morning and then out at lunchtime and try to
So
balance working kids and a lot of them can do it, but for some of them, they pick up a niggle, an injury, etc. And it is hard. And you see these people going like that, a bit professional athletes. They go, yeah, it's hard for them because they got in the morning and then they train and then they're bored for hours. I'm like, that sounds brilliant. That sounds
it's
horrible.
great. I know.
Like that's what we would dream
Yeah,
of, and you get paid to do it as well.
I know. Wouldn't that be nice?
I know, but so like we were saying at the start, like you said about cheating, I don't think you did cheat. I mean, you went back the way. I mean, you gave yourself more hard work, so I wouldn't call that cheating. But for yourself with the BBC investigation, you decided at some point you were going to, well, okay, I'm going to take EPO as a human experiment, and you documented it as well for the BBC. So where did that idea come from?
We had started to look into doping in sport. It was because it was actually the genesis of the idea was around the Glasgow Commonwealth Games, where it was announced that Alan Wells was going to be the kind of face of it, and someone had come to us with allegations about Wells, that Alan Wells, had cheated his way to his gold medal. That was the allegation, and we started to investigate it, and that took longer than we expected. But that was the genesis of the whole doping in sport idea. In the end, we put a film out, and it did contain allegations about Alan Wells, which he denied. But as we kind of got more into obviously that was a long time ago, as we got more into the investigation, it became clear that the problem in sport was, if anything, as bad as it had ever been, doping wise. WADA would tell us that they were only catching 2% of the suspected dopers, and that the dopers were always managing to stay one step ahead of the anti-dopers. And so the athlete's biological passport, the ABP, was not long in existence. It had been going for a few years, and it had been hailed as the kind of next level in trying to catch the dopers. So the athlete's biological passport, I'm sure all your viewers will know, but it's essentially working out what an athlete's normal baseline is for their blood levels, the hemoglobin levels. As you know, the more hemoglobin, the more oxygen you've got in your blood, the faster you can go. Simple as that. And blood transfusions, EPO, what they do is increase your hemoglobin levels, give you more oxygen in your blood, and make you go faster. And so, but it's really hard to detect EPO in the urine because it's a really short window, 24, maybe 36 hours, at least it was back then. And so the athlete's biological passport was designed not to identify the product in the blood, it was to identify the effect of the product in the blood. So if we knew what an athlete's normal levels were, if suddenly those levels 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks later are kind of through the roof, and there's no other explanation for it, like altitude or whatever, then that's a red flag. And so the ABP had been introduced, and we thought, well, let's put it to the test. Does this work? Because lots of people and scientists were saying that it was not as effective as they'd hoped it would be. And so we thought we would try and put it to the test. And yeah, it was quite ambitious. It hadn't been done before in a non-scientific way. There were some scientific studies out there which we based ours on, so it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was necessarily, exceptionally brave or reckless. We looked at all the available science, and we based our study on that. We had a doctor who was looking after me, and and we went through a whole lot of bureaucracy in the BBC there for a good reason, to make sure it was safe to do this. And eventually we got the go ahead, and we did it.
Wow, I think it's very, very brave.
So, well, I mean, the detail of the experiment was, I think it was a 14-week experiment. And for the 4 months leading up to it, we decided that I was going to, and this is a bit like getting paid to train. I was basically training nearly full time, 12 to 16 hours a week. We had a professional coach. So the idea was I would get fitter than I'd ever been before the start of the experiment, so that if there were any kind of big surges in performance, we would know it was the drugs and not just doing more training. And we concentrated on cycling just because I'm so injury prone. And I thought it'd be better to, I knew I would get away with it if I was up in my cycling training. I still kept running and cycling, but running and swimming, but it was mainly cycling. And so I got as fit as I'd ever been, and then we started the 14 weeks, and we had basically I was getting my bloods done every week for 14 weeks, and the first 4 weeks was called the baseline, so that establishes what my normal hemoglobin levels were. And then the next, I think it was 7 or 8 weeks, called the loading phase, where I would be taking small amounts of EPO 3 times a week. And then at the end of that, there was the washout phase, where you stop taking it, and that is actually the most dangerous period for an athlete, because then your blood wants to return to normal, and if that happens really quickly, then that's a red flag. So there are all sorts of ways that this system can red flag you. And I did a performance test after 4 weeks, and another one after. So at the end of the baseline, I did a VO2 max test on the bike, and then I did another one at the end of the loading phase. And the results were pretty marked. So I got a 58 in my first one, which I think for an amateur athlete is all right. And after 8 weeks of being on the microdosing, it was up to 63, so 7%.
Jesus.
7% in 8 weeks.
Wow. That's 2 months of training with EPO.
And we decided we wouldn't up the hours of training either. We kept the standard the same. Mm-hmm. So just so that it would, to try and make the experiment as valid as possible. So I wasn't just suddenly training much more. We kept the hours the same, but it just got easier as the weeks went on. It just got. I never felt any different. I never wasn't walking around feeling different. In my day to day. It's not like steroids where maybe a bit sort of a bit more hit up or aggressive. Nothing like that. I didn't feel any different apart from when I was on my bike, and only really when the points where I knew I should have been wasted, I should have been knackered, I just wasn't. At the end of a 3 or 4 hour ride, in the blistering cold and wet. I did this thing in the winter, did the experiment in the winter, yeah. So it was bittersweet, because obviously I had to stop. I'd stopped racing. I'd endeavoured that I wouldn't race for the whole period. The fact that the last race I did was just a few days before the loading phase, and I got my best ever performance on a bike. And then I stopped racing after that. And I never raced again for years, actually. But I didn't really feel the same joy that I didn't feel the joy that you would, when your numbers are going north, the way you do when you see your PBs going down or your wattage going up, and I didn't feel that. In fact, the first time I did it, I felt pretty sick, because even though I'm not even at the top end of amateur sport. I'm certainly not going to the Olympics, but I'm still an athlete and I'm still a racer, and it didn't feel right. That first time I felt pretty gutted about it. But over the weeks, I suppose I got over that, and I just got on with the training, and then the whole point of this though wasn't to see if the drugs worked. Everyone knows the drugs work. That wasn't the point of this. The point of this was to see if I could get away with it. And so what we had to do was get someone who an accredited anti-doping scientist who had access to the athlete's biological passport software, and they would run my numbers through, because I was getting the bloods done every week. I had them all plotted on a chart, and we asked this scientist to run the numbers through the software to see what the red flags were, and essentially, and then we asked another scientist to interpret the results for us. He was a guy called Dr. Carson Lundy. He's in the film, and he analysed the results for us, and he said, whilst he, as an expert, could see traces of what I had done, it was nowhere near enough to create a red flag, and that in real life I would never have been even flagged as suspicious. And so our ambition to take enough to get a small performance boost, but not enough to trigger a red flag, had been successful.
Wow.
We got away with it.
And you got away with it. Wow, that's quite scary. Like, so it just shows you, like, if you can do it at amateur level, at professional level, like you've seen the likes of Lance Armstrong, he had one of the most systematic processes in place to cheat. The Russia with Icarus, the documentary as well, they had such a systematic. So if a guy, an amateur athlete is getting away with it, then how much is getting away with it at some top level sports,
Oh, that's right. I mean, we ordered this off the internet, China. I mean, just before I came on here, I just had a wee look just to see if you can still do it, and of course you can. I mean, you don't know what you're buying though, so because I work for the BBC and we were making sure we were doing this safely, we actually had the stuff tested before we used it to make sure it was what it said in the label, and of course it was. But I mean, it goes without saying, I would hope that nobody would resort to doing what we did. We did it under very strict conditions. We did it in what we thought was for the public interest, and it goes without saying that I haven't done it since. But it was an interesting episode, and I hope it contributed to the overall sort of knowledge of anti-doping. I did speak to the anti-doping agency about it. They asked me about the experiment, and I gave them as much help as I could. I was asked to accept was it a 1 or a 2 year ban? Yes, because I had cheated and so that's what I had to write to UK anti-doping and promise not to race for either 1 or 2 years, I can't quite remember, in order for them not to ban me, because they were going to have to ban me. I think there were a lot of complaints from amateur athletes in Glasgow and stuff like that. I've raced this guy before, and what if I race him again next week and he's still full of the juice? So in the end, I never raced for years. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I was never troubling podiums anyway, so it wasn't a huge loss.
And you can understand where the amateur athletes are coming from, but at the same time, though, you've been very open. You know, even was this after the film came out as well?
Oh, yeah.
So like even you're so transparent and said, here's why I'm doing it. I'm not I you've stated your feelings on it, like I feel dirty, etc. You know, I just don't feel right. But there's still people who complain about it as well. But you will get the people who complain, you know. So
Yeah, I never took it to heart too much. And the film, the film did well, and it's a film I'm still very proud of. It's
mhm.
Yeah, it's 10 years ago now, and I think I had a wee look at it this morning just to refresh myself, and I think it still stands the test of time. You can still get it on
Yeah,
YouTube.
yeah. I remember watching it years ago, and I was like, wow, opened up my eyes to it, and yeah, and I was like, I went back to it, and I was like, I've never heard of anybody, an amateur athlete, you probably you won't, who has been like caught doing, or anyone who's actually voluntarily did it. It's always at professional level, but I just thought I'd get you on because, just to give people an understanding, at the professionals who do get caught, how do they feel using the EPO? Because you see, well, a lot of people say, for example, um, someone who wins a big marathon and they run it in a world class time and they finish the line and they're just like, wow, so happy, still jogging about. People are like, how are they still like that? And it's like, well, if we speak to Mark, like you were saying, there was at one point you stopped going out with your friends for a cycle because it was getting too easy.
Well, I mean, some of my mates that I would ride with, yeah, I stopped riding with them just because it was I couldn't really explain it. I can tell them what I was doing, so and I just thought I would just stay clear of group rides for a while, just because it was just difficult to explain. How could I explain that I was suddenly training effectively full time, and that appeared to be flying up hills like they weren't there in a way that 6 months before I would, they'd be waiting for me at the top. I mean, look, there's no doubt about it. I would love to be that fit again. And it wasn't just the drugs. It was the fact that I had the opportunity to do this whole experiment where I was able to train for 16 hours a week. That's never happened before or since. And that was a really nice experience. But yeah, and I told my cycling club about it. I said, look, this is coming out, guys, and I'm prepared to hand in my membership if you would rather.
Hmm.
But they were really supportive, and they said, "No, you've done a good thing, and this is for our benefit, really. So we're happy for you to carry on riding with us." But we're back.
Yeah,
But we're back to where we were, and they're now waiting for me at the top of the hills.
yeah. Which is the most natural thing to happen.
Yeah.
But like I was saying before, um, sorry, I get something stuck in my throat. Like you said before, people complaining about you, etc. So that's completely understandable. But I think that the message is there. It you're microdosing, and it wasn't. It was you basically got away with it. Like in like cooperation with the WADA. But how do they get around that? How can they get around the microdosing if it is within the normal ranges? It's quite a hard thing to test in.
I think it really is, and that was the point of our experiment. I think um, the anti-doping industry is always chasing its tail. There's so many things that athletes can do that are actually within the rules. Never
Hmm.
mind the stuff that's against the rules. If you really, really dive into the rules around when you can take certain drugs like corticosteroids, like in and out of competition. There are all sorts of ways that you can really benefit your performance. Things that are already legal or just on the line. Um, and then when it gets to the stuff that's actually banned, you've got to be on it. You've got to be on it really quickly. So I think a lot of the anti-doping world's best results are coming from intelligence rather than sort of random testing, or at least it was back in 2015. So I think they've got their work cut out, But I think the science is evolving all the time, and I think the athletes' biological passport and all the other testing, it's all evolving, and you can, they're developing new tests, so they're keeping samples now for, I think the statute of limitations has now been increased to 10 years, I think. So they're keeping samples, it's either 8 or 10 years, don't hold me to that, but they're keeping samples frozen for longer now, so that as the science develops and we can find traces of drugs that they weren't able to find years ago, they're redoing these tests. And the hope is that will generate more and more positives, and even people who've retired, who've won medals, maybe they will become the focus of new investigations, because it doesn't really matter how long you're out of the sport. If you cheated your way to a gold medal and there's evidence to prove it, then the public should know about it. So one of the things that I suppose I was left with from my experiment was a sort of increased respect and gratitude for those who choose to do it clean, knowing, or at least suspecting, that many of their competitors are, not doing it clean, but they carry on. They do their best. And I think I had a new and profound respect for those guys, because it can't be easy.
No, definitely not. Even if you're a professional athlete and obviously these people can't come out and whistleblow because of defamation, etc. But deep down, they know their competitors are cheating, but they still choose to go clean, and they need to work almost, say, 10 times harder and live the life of a monk, probably need to sacrifice family, friends, social, having a normal life to get towards, that every 4 years, every championship. But then someone comes along and they are doping and they take it right off. And so it's not just, the physical, aspect of it, it's the mental aspect, just, and there would be, all these voices in their head saying, oh, just do it. They're doing it, but morally and ethically having that battle with themselves, which, yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. I've got so much respect for the professionals out there who do it clean. But unfortunately, from what we've seen, the likes of Lance Armstrong, Alberto Salazar has been, he's been banned for life, etc. And then in America, there was the Shelby Houlihan and the Burrito Gate, which I found particularly quite funny. My first question was, she was saying, no, it was in the burrito. And I was like, how do you know it was in the burrito? And then there was a bit, what happened was it was on Instagram, and I think it was some page had posted about it. And there was these people, a lot of Americans saying, no, this is a lot of rubbish. They're just targeting her, etc. And I commented saying, she got caught, end of, yeah, server ban. And all of a sudden, I get this message from some guy. I was like, who the hell is this? And this guy gave me dog's abuse and all sorts, and how he was Shelby Houlihan's roommate and all sorts. And he's like, she's clean and this, and that. And I just said to him again, she got caught, end of. And then he proceeded to explain to me that the drug that she got caught for was like nandrolone. And he proceeded to tell me everything, how nandrolone works, etc., and that as well. And he said Shelby and her coach, they've never heard of it before. And then I said to him, I was like, well, first of all, I said, I bet you thought Lance Armstrong was still clean. And then I said, so Shelby and her coach don't know anything about nandrolone, but her roommate knows everything about it. And then he blocked me. But that was another one as well. It was just after COVID. I think she got caught, but that's during COVID. To my knowledge, there was no drug testing because of the COVID world. But that's from what I'm reading up on. But that was another one as well. So it wasn't just EPO. There's other ones out there, that like nandrolone. I still don't know how it works. I don't know how it improves an athlete's performance, but it's a banned substance.
An anabolic steroid, but which is a strange choice for any athlete to use, because it stays in your system for so long.
Yeah.
And I think that's why over the years there's been a lot of nandrolone cases that have been challenged, sometimes successfully, because an athlete would say, if I am going to use steroids, I'm never going to use this because it stays in my system for so long. But yeah, look, the thing is, it's if an athlete at some point takes a decision to cheat, there's plenty of stuff out there for them to use,
Yeah,
and then, but the thing that, and I suppose it was the thing that we actually put this in the film because Lance Armstrong was my hero,
yeah,
and I loved him. I loved him, and he came to Glasgow. I don't know if some of your viewers will remember this. He came to Glasgow in 2009, did his Paisley ride. I was on it. I was there for reporting Scotland on my bike, and I filmed. I did a segment. I did a piece for the news, and I was a total fanboy, And when I asked him, just hang on a second, just pal, you have to wait, okay? You'll have to wait 10 minutes, okay? Sorry, my wee boy's at home today, and he's not very well.
that's okay. That's cool.
Yeah, and and I interviewed him, and it was pathetic, this was before all the allegations came out, but it was before it was known, and yeah, it was not my finest hour as a journalist. And when it all came out about Armstrong, I was devastated, and the thing that I found, as well as being devastated, though, I was also in equal parts fascinated. And you made this point earlier about how people can still celebrate at the end, and I think it's how Lance Armstrong seemed able to compartmentalise what he was doing, and put the kind of extremely organised cheating regime to one side and focus on them being the best team in the world, and then fight so hard against any claims that he was cheating.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually astonishing. It's astonishing how he and his team and everyone around him was able to do that for so long. And I do find it fascinating how people are able to live that sort of double life for so long, and and get away with it. I don't know whether it requires some element of sociopathy or dual personality. I don't know how to do it. I just know I couldn't have done it. I was able to do it only because I was being upfront about it. I think I would have crumbled at the first sight of a drug tester in real life.
Yeah, I think I grew up, just ethically, morally, what's right, what's wrong, and I always remember playing games on my PlayStation. I was younger, and you get stuck at a level, then you use the cheats, and it's like all the fun's gone. So I kind of learned, I was like, what's the point? All the fun's gone now. But like you're saying, a bit of like sociopathy or kind of split personality. Looking back, that clip in the film. You were right up in the car, and Lance Armstrong was in the boot of the car, and you were talking to him. He was just like, yeah, 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 and it was like, yeah, you're doing the tour of Ireland. He's like, yeah, yeah, and it's like looking back, that's the personality of a guy who he doesn't want to give anything away to anybody. It was just like one word answers, quite closed off, and but at the same time though, he wants that. I am in Paisley, come and ride with me, but I don't want to really chat to any journalist.
I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't hold that against him. And he was obviously getting mobbed everywhere he went. It wasn't as if I was putting them on the spot with any difficult questions. But it wasn't much longer before the questions came, and they came thick and fast. And we've got Walsh and some other brave journalists to thank for that. It really blew the lid off things.
Yeah.
And I think, and that this film that I made along with my producer Murdoch Rogers, who's I'm sure some of your viewers will also know, famous partner. I mean that film had repercussions as well. It eventually led to Alberto Salazar getting banned for 4 years.
Yeah.
We were the first to make the allegations about him. Investigative journalism has got a place in the fight against doping. If it weren't for David Walsh, the Lance Armstrong's titles would still be intact. There's myriad other examples where journalists have been responsible. Of course, there's the Russia scandal with the German journalist whose name escapes me right now. What's he called? Oh God, he's a friend of mine. Anyway, the big Russia scandal that was exposed by the German journalist. It will come back to me. It'll come back to me in a minute. Anyway, my point is that as well as the anti-doping investigators, journalists have got a part to play, but also so have athletes. And I think for a long time, athletes have felt unable to speak out about their concerns, mainly because they don't have proof and they've only got suspicions, and that's an issue. But there has been an omerta, around doping throughout the years, especially in the years of Armstrong, and to a certain extent, I think that still exists, and hopefully athletes, if they feel able to, if they don't feel able to speak out publicly, then then they can get in touch with people like me, or David Walsh, and and then who knows what could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say though, David Walsh. Obviously we'll start with Lance Armstrong. Because like you're saying before about samples being kept for 8 to 10 years. Well, also two things about Armstrong. Also, David Walsh, pushing it. He's seen this guy's fought back from cancer. Now he's heading up mountains and Tour de France like faster than the actual like something's not right. And then, but then also there's some people in some forums say Armstrong's mistake was returning back to Tour de France when
Totally.
he came third, and it's like then he took samples then, and then the technology had moved forward, and they found traces, and the game was kind of up. So maybe if if he didn't let his ego get the better of him, maybe he wouldn't have been caught, and then he wouldn't have.
Oh,
Yeah, we would.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. If he'd stayed away, I'm sure his titles would have been intact. I mean, but that whole era though was tainted, and
Yeah,
not all of the Tour de France winners have had their titles taken off them, and there's something to be said about that. Armstrong was made an example of, but he was probably the best at it, and his doping system was probably the most advanced. He certainly wasn't the only one, and the tours before, tours after, there was, we know about people who have won the tour who have been busted for doping, and Ulrich and the likes. They've not all had their tours taken off them. So there's a question about how we police this, how we make examples of people. Do we allow people to rehabilitate themselves? We did with David Miller,
yeah,
the
yeah.
cyclist who took his doping ban on the chin and came back and became a strong anti-doping voice. So we've all got a part to play, including even people like Lance Armstrong, because and at least when he did get caught, he did, and he has consistently spoken about it. He's told everyone about how he did it, why he did it, and he's I suppose got in some way to atone for what he did. But look, there's no doubt about it. That era of cycling was absolutely filthy,
Oh yeah.
and and you can't really trust any of the performances.
Yeah. Let's get back to that. Feel like he cheated, but at the same time though, when you look back on it all, sure, most likely the evidence is there that we're all on it. So was Armstrong just the best on drugs? Like, was he the best athlete for that era, with that drug tainted era? And like you're saying, and they come out and say no why he did it and etc. I think there's different types of whys. Because like I said before we start recording, there's 300 Kenyans been banned since 2015. In Kenya, it's a poor country, etc., but it's blessed with the in history, the greatest distance runners in the whole wide world. A lot of these runners, they probably don't need drugs to win races. They're genetically, they live at high altitude, they train at high altitude because they're running barefoot. Some things in their life, they've got the best running form. So, but again, you see a lot of people saying, agents coming in, and an agent controls the athlete, etc., and say, okay, I want you to take this, and then you win this marathon, and you get $300,000, and three hundred
Well,
thousand dollars.
that's the
That's
issue, because they're all living in, or at least coming from abject poverty. So
yeah,
I think it's I think there are social issues involved when it comes to the decisions that have been made by athletes coming from those sorts of countries. Doesn't excuse it, but it perhaps goes some way to explaining it a bit better.
yeah,
It's a way out.
yeah. It is. It's a shame. But again, at the same time, though, but like you said, WADA said, they're only catching 2%. So if it's 300 Kenyans that've been caught in the last 10 years, how many more are? And in every other sport, how much they get away with it.
I don't know what the percentage is these days, but certainly in 2015 it was 2%. That was the number back then.
Yeah, that
Yeah, I
is.
haven't looked into the up to date figures for a while.
But no, it's wild though. But obviously, look, yourself and me, who we don't condone anybody, taking any drugs to enhance performance at any level at all. But I think it was good to get you on to talk about your experience. Like because a lot of people probably don't know what it would be like to take performance enhancing drugs. Like you said, everything just felt effortless when you were training. You get to a point where you're feeling wasted and they've still got so much more to give, and that's how maybe these people who have been banned, that's how maybe they've been feeling in the races. That's how they can just turn it on in the last lap of a race, or the last in a cycling race. It's how they can just explode.
I think, though, I would say something else about how I felt during it, which was the stress of the doping experiment, right? So I wasn't stressed because I was going to get caught, winning a medal because I wasn't competing. That's not why I was stressed. So I was stressed because if the experiment didn't work and the anti-doping and the athlete's biological passport caught me, right, then the whole thing had been a waste of time, a waste of BBC money. I would still have had to broadcast it. The program had been a complete flop, and it would have been a massive problem for me and for BBC, right? So you can sort of equate that level of risk to the level of risk of being if you're a real athlete being caught, right? And and I suppose if you're I know you're saying about not wanting to condone this to anyone. Well, I can tell you that the level of stress involved for a normal person, I consider myself not a sociopath, and so the level of stress involved was close to unbearable. And I'm just a normal guy and worried about my job and my professional reputation in the BBC's. And I had kind of, me and my producer, we pushed for this to happen. And if I'd messed it up in some way, that would have been a complete disaster, and the stress levels of that were just close to unbearable. And so I think I could probably equate that with what the stress levels would be like if you were an athlete and actually doping for real. I don't know how you could do it. I don't know how you could actually, day to day,
Yeah.
get on your life.
It's also for me, I think, like just looking, at what EPO does. It enhances your red blood cell count, means you get more oxygen. More oxygen to the muscle means more energy, etc. You can work harder. But like you did it under the guidance of a doctor. So all the, I'm guessing all the doses were, strictly measured, etc. But someone who does it, not got a clue what they're doing. The dangers are, EPO. It can thicken your blood, and that can become dangerous. People think, that first of all you're cheating, but second of all you could put your life in danger.
Mm. I mean, to be fair, we couldn't get a doctor to actually monitor the drug use or to help us with dosages. We could only get a doctor to keep an eye on my health and my blood levels. So for ethical reasons, no doctor in Britain that I could find would do that for us. So we had to work that out ourselves. But what we did was we used all the available medical literature out there. And there's a lot out there already. We used all the literature out there, and we could see what amount of EPO has been given to athletes in these test cases, and so where it had been given completely safely without any adverse effects, at least to their health. Because you're right, it's a drug that increases your blood levels, and as you know, there's been all sorts of stories about cyclists in the 90s, dying of heart failure because their blood's so thick. So what we did was we looked at all the kind of the numbers for the amount of EPO being given to athletes, and where there had been ethical approval to do that at universities, and we took less. We took less than that. So I was confident enough that the amount we were going to be taking would be safe. And we did have a doctor who would check the bloods every week to say, well, it's going up a wee bit, but it's fine. It's at this level, it's at this level, it's at this level. And I would have known if it was getting too high. And if it was getting too high, not only was the experiment, in trouble, but I would have had to, for health reasons, just to say, well, we can't do any more of this. But we were as sure as we could be that we were going to do it within safe levels. So I didn't. That was in the lower end of the risk, the risk factors that I was looking at. I was more concerned about the end of my career. Going badly.
Yeah, and thankfully it didn't affect your career, even though it was, like it was only an experiment to see what the effects and stuff are, and it's a great film, like it's a great insight. And also meeting your hero Lance Armstrong, and then obviously all that that all came out as well. But also they'll finish us on a happy note. Like also, well, first of all, your career wasn't finished. And also you're now looking to do Ironman up in Aberfeldy. Your first 1 year, half Ironman up in Aberfeldy.
Yes, I'm not sure I've got another full Ironman in me. Entered my 6th decade recently, so
Wow.
But I'm still knocking out park runs and whatnot, and I'm back swimming with my swimming club, and I'm trying to get something done 6 days a week, something like that. So I'm keeping fit enough, work permitting,
Yeah.
permitting.
But no, that's good going. Training for even just one endurance discipline is hard enough, but doing all three for one training and for a half Ironman, fair play to you. And when is it, the half Ironman?
It's in the end of August usually, so I haven't entered yet, but I've got my eye on it. And if I can get clear on it, the training, July and August, then I'll go for it. But in the meantime, I'll be down at the park run on Saturday, hopefully hovering around 20 minutes.
Right. If you ever need a pacemaker for sub 20, just give me a shout. I'll come and pace you.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay. I managed to go sub 20 last year. Just got under last year.
Brilliant.
Been a while since I've done it since. In fact, no, it was I think it was December 23. It's the last sub 20, so I want to get back under by the summer. That's the ambition. Clean.
Yeah, aye, clean. Aye. I know if you need a pacemaker, give me a shout. I'll give you a hand.
Oh, hey,
as long as it's not a hilly park run.
Oh no. I try and do the flat ones if I can.
The one in Greenock is very flat, like really flat. The only thing is it's right next to the Clyde. So
windy.
As soon as anything, say between 10, 50 mile an hour, and above that, it's just as soon as you get a bit of wind, it affects your whole time. You drop by 5 to 10 seconds a K. It's just annoying. But
not to worry.
But no, this has been thank you again for coming on. And also, once again, we do not condone the use of performance-enhancing drugs at all. Mark was just doing it as an experiment. But it's been a great chat, and I really thank you for coming on and sharing your experience.